Y'all know we are picky about our sponsors, and this one was handpicked by us because we absolutely love it. April and I are huge fans of Hot Source Yoga. Not only does their hot Pilates and hot sculpt keep us fit and feeling good, but we also have a ton of fun doing it. If you are in or around Santa Cruz, you gotta check out Hot Source Yoga. And if you want to be extra badass and up your Pilates game, or perhaps become a Pilates teacher, dive into their online Hot Pilates teacher training anytime from the privacy of your own home. The founder, Nicole, is also one of my favorite life coaches who has helped hundreds of women empower themselves to make their dreams a reality. Nicole offers sessions in person or online. Use code SHAMELESS for $20 off your first coaching session at NicoleDuke.com, and be sure to visit HotSourceYogaStudio.com to see why it's our latest obsession. I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopus, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You were listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hey, Shameless Sex Revolution.
Ooh, I like that opening. Get after it. We are in our recording studio, aka my house, and we are both mothers. April and I had children. They're really furry. She's had her child now for how long now? What are you at?
I got him in May of last year. Mid-May, so not a year. He just turned a year.
Okay. Well, I just got, and Legend is, your dog has been traveling with us as we move around, and he's a very sweet, trauma-free animal. Never had a hard life because he came to you at a very young age. I just adopted a rescue who is 2 years old. Originally in the shelter, his name was Skrillex, if anyone knows who Skrillex is. And then the family that I fostered him, that I adopted him from, named him Perry. So his name is Perry. He is a Tibetan Terrier mix. He is my new baby. I got him on Sunday, and then by Monday I was like, fuck, I'm a mom now.
And you're like, wait, I had these trips planned.
And I had these experiences. We had to podcast, I think that day. We had 2 podcasts, one in person, one on on Zoom, and I was feeling to all of you mothers out there, I finally understand, and I can't say I fully understand. I know that your job is way harder than my job, by the way. I don't want to take that away from you. Don't get mad at me. But what I will say is that whole thing about like being half present because you're worried, or you've experienced this with your dog, because you're worried about your animal because they're doing some funny business over there, and we were podcasting. It was so stressful because I had this concern that was so new for me to manage, and so I don't know if I'm ever having actual human children this lifetime. I really don't think so. I'm just not feeling like my calling. But I just want to say that was an interesting experience, and I'm still having it. But here's the breakthrough. We had a dog trainer come today. Originally, April's dog was just going to be here as a test bunny for my dog, but then her dog got training, and now we're part of a package deal. We got to buy one, get one free dog deal.
I learned that I have a dog that is a spoiled brat who gets rewarded even if he throws tantrums at Chuck E. Cheese. That's what the comparison was. And he's super social and super fun.
Yeah, the trainer said, though, he's like, your dog is like the dog that you get offered Chuck E. Cheese to for being a brat.
Total brat.
That's his reward.
Like, as long as you stop, I'll take you to Chuck E. Cheese. Oh, you didn't stop here still. Here's Chuck E. Cheese. Because you're just, and he is definitely.
He just wants to play and he's full of joy, but he wants to run the show.
He wants to run all the shows. And your dog is like
trauma. He's so sweet. He instantly gravitated towards me. He has an anxious, if anyone knows attachment styles, he's a very anxious attachment style, meaning he's now my shadow and wants to be on my lap and with me all the time. And he also has big socialization issues with other dogs and new humans. And so I just wanted to do a little shout out because this is the first time we've been recording 3 or 4 episodes in the last couple of days, and it's been chaos. And it's the first time that we can now have both dogs.
We've had to lock one up.
Yeah.
We've had to take the other one.
Yeah. Now they're
out.
both in here. It's
right.
peaceful. It's quiet. We had one session with this dog trainer. So I just want to say, I'm not going to do a shout out to the dog trainer because I don't know if they want that on a sex podcast. But if anyone wants a good reference for a great dog trainer in Santa Cruz, feel free to email us at info@shamelesssex.com and we will totally send you this human's way because
we're putting our dogs in boot camp.
Yeah. We're like, we'll sign up for the lifetime package, please.
I know, seriously.
Oh, but they're worth it. So cute. So this episode is with Dr. Jess O'Reilly, who also has a podcast, by the way, Sex with Dr. Jess.
Yeah.
I believe that we will be on her podcast as well. That's what it sounds like. And we answer some sex questions from our listeners as well as her listeners. And she's so awesome. She knows. I mean, she's a doctorate level.
She was a teacher. Uh-huh. And I think that also helps people deliver information in a way that you can receive.
Yeah.
Right. So she's
a public speaker.
She's a great speaker and very, I think, just knowledgeable in a variety of topics. And we covered some various things that we've never talked about before. Yeah. So stay tuned. It might be your sex question that she answers, or there may be something that speaks to you. We answer everything from trauma. So having a lot of trauma in your body and how to manage that either in conversations with partners or how to work with the trauma in your body around sex. We talk about normal ideas, and normal meaning air quotes, like I don't think there's normal about the size of labia and the cultural ideas and norms. What was the question that she asked us? Visual
about?
Impairment.
Oh,
and connecting with a significant other.
Yeah, and then, there was some really interesting information there. So it's a fun podcast. So stay tuned. But we are going to answer one of your sex questions right now. April, you ready?
I'm ready. My dog is out in the yard barking.
Well, you can't. We have all these new tricks on how to work with that, but now
is not the time.
At least your dog is barking outside.
Yeah.
Get it, legend. Get it. Okay, so I was a virgin when I met my husband at 20, so he is the only person I've been with. We've been together almost 8 years now, and I'm still so nervous when it comes to sex. I have never initiated and came onto him first. Here recently, he has talked to me about wanting me to come on to him sometimes. And trust me, I want to, but I get so nervous and embarrassed to the point where I just don't. I'm not sure how to get more confident and comfortable. What should I do? I feel like a lot of people have experienced this at some point in their lives. Insecurity about initiating.
Initiation is hard, especially if you need that.
If the other person needs it, you mean?
Right. If you're not used to it and you need the initiation and you're always the initiator.
And you get to a point where you're like, I want to feel, because your partner here, to the listener, wants to feel wanted and desired, as do most people. Even if some people are really comfortable being the initiator most of the time, like actually a lot of people are. Most of the people I'm in partnerships with kind of have to be that because I'm more attracted to that. Like I'm attracted to being, I'm more of like in a submissive role. And I know that they still want to feel wanted and desired. So there are ways to initiate even from a submissive role. But with this person, we won't even go there right now necessarily because this person's speaking more to like, I'm just afraid. I even have the desire. It doesn't sound like they don't have like a sex drive issue coming up. It's just, I want to, but I get in my own way. I like maybe start to even open the idea to that, but then I stop that because it's really scary. And one of my first things that came to mind was stop putting a lot of pressure on yourself for it to be perfect or super sexy, or I don't know if you're doing that, but it needing to be perceived as a certain way, like you're so confident and good at it. Like embrace the awkward and the discomfort around it, and maybe even talk to them about it. Like, I want to initiate this, and like I have some fear around it, and so I'm going to take some initiative. And like if it feels awkward, can we just like lovingly laugh together? And then you can too. You can totally do that. And the other day when I shared this on a podcast, I did the Amsterdam night, right? That was like, I mean, there was moments where I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing right now, but I was just like, I'm just going to be silly. So I'm taking on a role, but I just like say some ridiculous things like, so do you come here often?
Yeah, without an accent. You're like, I'm not really
I'm not good
tapping in.
So you do what is true to you, right? So for that, I chose to not be, a woman from Amsterdam because I'm not good at a Dutch accent. I was a California girl with a nickname Callie. It was living in Amsterdam. For this person, what are you actually comfortable with? Who are you really as, a sexual being in terms of like the energy that you want to bring forth? Is that person dominant? Is that person still submissive? Is that person submissive? I'm speaking for myself. Is that person really sensual? Is that person like really strong? And then come about it from that place and just allow it to unfold however it wants to unfold. Do you ever have that happen where you ever feel like initiating is kind of scary?
Oh, yeah. I am not a very good initiator. I never really have been. I think that when I was single, I was a little bit more forthright with wanting to initiate sex with people that I was hooking up with because I just gave zero fucks.
Yeah.
Which also would be a good suggestion for this person. Kind of peel back maybe some of the heady stuff that you get stuck in, like become aware of those things. So what are you getting stuck in when you think about initiating? My thing is rejection or fear that maybe my penis owning partner, his dick's not going to get hard, and there's things around all of that, right? So, okay, what I'm doing right now isn't working, but I'm going to tap into me and what I think is fun and interesting. And also you can communicate like, hey, tonight I want to initiate, and it might not be even a whole act. It might be maybe putting on some oil for a body massage that you're going to provide to the receiver, or you putting it on yourself and sliding up and down.
I love what you said about getting clear on like the fear there of like, what is it? Because they don't really say it. It's just that I just don't feel confident. But like, yeah, what comes up for you when you're like, is it rejection, or is it I can't do this, or this is shameful, I'm not supposed to do this, I'm a slutty if I do this, and to get really clear on that. And then and then also April, what you said, like, there are so many ways to initiate. Like I can initiate literally by just putting my hand on April's leg if we were lovers, and just start like rubbing it and maybe grab it and just look her in the eyes and smile. That could say sex.
Yeah.
I could do it by just touching, putting my hand over your genitals really quickly. I could do it by walking by you.
Listening to erotica.
Yeah, so many things. Or, there's so many ways.
Listen to this podcast.
If you're afraid, you could send a text message. They're in the other room, and you're like, I'm horny.
I did that last night.
Did you?
And I'm not an initiator. I struggle with initiation. I'll put on the lingerie. I'll do kind of that stuff sometimes. I will say that it is a scary thing for me because it takes some energy and effort, right? And you're right. You don't necessarily need to overthink it or do some big production where I'm going to do this whole theme
Amsterdam,
night. Or Amsterdam. Or I'm going to play this role, because that sometimes doesn't feel authentic. And if you're already shy or you already have this sort of armor of shame or whatever that looks like, I would maybe check in with yourself, go over something in your mind that you would be interested in doing before you even share it with your partner. Write down what comes up for you, the scary what ifs could happen. What's the worst case scenario? Write those down. Feel free to share those with your partner maybe before this night is planned or day is planned. And then from there, kind of tap in and do what feels good.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not a full initiation of the penetrative sex. Maybe it looks like, hey, we're going to mutually self-pleasure, or we're going to watch a instructional video on what your deepest desires are, or we're going to download some random scene from a movie that I thought was hot, or a Sex and the City episode, and play that out. There's so many ways to really encompass initiating. It doesn't necessarily have to be you putting in all of this effort on your own.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I love this question because I think a lot of people can relate to it. So thank you, dear listener. We love our listeners. We have the best listeners ever. Are you ready for a bio? Yep.
Yeah.
An award-winning speaker. See, I already messed it up. The other day, what did you read something so perfectly.
Was that
like,
for Dr. Jess? The question.
On this podcast.
Yes.
And it was actually a very sensitive question. My first thought was not about the sensitive question. I was like, wow, you nailed it. I was like, oh, wait, sensitive question.
I know.
Sorry.
You're like, yeah. I was like, oh, thanks.
Sorry, but you really did. You really nailed it. Anyway, so I was like,
thanks.
maybe I should hand this off to you from now on. Less work for me.
I think I read well.
You do. Do you want to read this? You haven't read it yet.
I'll give it a shot. Sure. Here we go.
Here we go.
An award-winning speaker, Dr. Jess O'Reilly has worked with thousands of couples from all corners of the globe to transform their relationships via her wildly successful Marriage as a Business program. From Prague and Istanbul to Albuquerque and New York City, her relationship retreats receive rave reviews from some of the most powerful couples in the world, who are drawn to her enthusiastic, practical, and no-nonsense approach to happily ever after. Jess is also co-host of the popular podcast Sex with Dr. Jess, and she contributes regularly to the biggest names in international media, such as Women's Health, Men's Fitness, Cosmopolitan, Self, Showtime, and the Movie Network. To learn more, visit sexwithdrjess.com.
Okay, you're totally reading all the bios from now on. That is now your job. And probably the sex questions too. I mean, you have a lot of jobs, but now I hand that off to you.
Thank you.
So you're so good at that. I just want to say, I know we're going to continue on the podcast. It's not about me, but so you know what I thought about what comes up for me when I actually, because I mean, I know how to read, everyone. Yeah. But I remember this old fear of, being forced to read out loud in grade school, in elementary school. And I just will get this like heady process that comes in the way. And that will happen here.
Well, because of the pre-law stuff that I had to go through, public speaking was a huge piece of that. So there were many courses on, litigating as well. When you have to practice litigation, it's difficult because you're presenting a case in front of
that. Yeah, that makes sense. And you're actually, yeah.
And there's different, I don't know, with the coursework everywhere. The courses that I took were a lot of uncomfortability, and reading is great for me because I don't have to actually use my brain. I'm just looking at the words on the page, and I can sound out the words, even if I'm uncomfortable with it.
So I do love public speaking, but I don't read directly from anything. I'm just
I'm the worst.
Overeating.
What I had the fear in are answering questions when I'm on another show or a radio show or a TV thing or a podcast or whatever it is, answering questions that I'm not prepared for. I stumble there. I'll get really heady and kind of think about my words.
I got to do this right. Got to do this right.
Yeah, and trying to deliver the proper information, how they will receive it before I've even practiced. That is where I get stuck.
Interesting.
If I have to read stuff, I'll be fine with that.
All right. Well, now we figured out more. See, everyone, we just had a breakthrough on air and figured out more about, because I'm all about efficiency. Like, hello, Tim Ferriss, and thank you for this sort of insight from 40-hour work week and all of your other things, is to do things efficiently. And April and I have done that. We're like, okay, this is your jam. Like, you're either better at this or you enjoy this more. This is my jam. And now we found something else that's April's jam. So
neither of us have egos. So I'm like, if you want to take that on, great. Yeah. I'm not like, I need to do that because
I'm grateful. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
girl.
Me too. And cool. That's why I've always thought that you enjoyed reading the bios. So I was
enjoy it all. I don't know why.
Giving you that piece. We never talked about it.
No, because
now we're talking about it with all of our listeners.
This is one of my issues, and you have the same issue. Like, we just will do everything all the time. Yeah. Like, and neither of us are like.
And delegating's difficult for me at times because I like to take it all on and do it properly. Yeah. However, I know that you could do it just as great, if not better.
Well, you can do this better.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, there you go. No pressure.
No pressure. All right. So we're going to dive into the podcast. But first, we'd like to take a moment to talk about one of our wonderful sponsors that we've talked about multiple times. We only have the best of sponsors because we're very particular. It's Dipsea. We love Dipsea. I love Dipsea. My clients in my sex and relationship coaching practice love Dipsea. It is an app that you can listen to. It's erotic short stories. So it's something where you can listen to anywhere, anytime, on your own time, and you can get turned on and aroused for you, for a partner. So I have a lot of clients that are like, I'm not connecting my body, or I'm not feeling very sensual or very sexual, and I don't really know how to get in there. This is a great way. We're very auditory people. So this is something that I really recommend to just about everyone. What do you love about it? You listen to those stories with your partner.
Well, we just talked about initiation, and I think this is a great way to sort of have both people get into the mood to if one person needs to initiate. I have an idea. Let's put on a Dipsea story that turned me on earlier, and perhaps you'll have the same genital light up that I did.
Throbbing, pulsating, juices.
Throb. Yeah. So for our listeners... Oh.
Sorry, my dog just tried to nip me.
Uh-oh. And for our listeners,
love bite.
That means you shameless sex beauty. Dipsea is offering a 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/shameless. That's 30 days free when you go to DIPSEA stories.com/shameless. Dipseastories.com/shameless. I know you want to check it out. Don't hesitate. Your time is now.
Do it. And let's dive into the podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. We're here with Dr. Jess. You're Sex with Dr. Jess, right? That's what your podcast is called?
That's my thing, yeah.
Thanks, with Dr. Jess, and Dr. Jess also an author, and we'll have more information too here about who you are, and that will also be in our bio ahead of time as well before the podcast and in all the show notes and all the things too. But what we are here to do today is to bring two podcasts together to answer some of your sex questions. We have some sex questions over here. We get them all the time. God, every day I feel like we get more and more sex questions. And then Jess has some as well for her listeners. And And this is always a wonderful opportunity to learn. Jess, can you just tell for our listeners, and your listeners have probably heard this if this part is going on your podcast, just a little bit about how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I was a high school teacher, and I had all my students coming to me with all of these issues related to sex and relationships, whether it was abusive relationships or unplanned pregnancy or STIs, or folks dealing with sexual assault and sexual shame, or a history of sexual abuse. And as a teacher, even as a teacher with a background in sex education, I didn't have the tools that I needed to support my students. And so what I saw was a sex education system that was lacking. And so I went back to do research to support teachers to deliver greater resources, education, and support for students. So focusing on the topics that are of greatest interest to students in Toronto, because that's where my research was conducted. And that was healthy relationships, HIV, AIDS, and sexual pleasure. So trying to put a discussion of pleasure back into sex education. And that's not exactly what I do today, because of course I graduated and thought, oh, maybe the school board will hire me as a consultant. And they were like, get the hell out of here. So I started speaking, and now I mostly speak to audiences, mostly entrepreneurs and executives. And then I do some online work. And of course I have my podcast, Sex with Dr. Jess, that I host with my hubby, Brandon, who is a civilian, a non-sex educator. Yes.
It's always good bringing the civilian perspective.
And the partnership piece.
Yes.
I'm sure y'all can bring up some personal experiences too within your relationship to the masses. Is Canada ahead in sex education, ahead of the US?
That's a great question. So one thing that we have that's quite different here is that our education curriculum, whether that be in geography, history, or human development and sexual health, is mandated at the provincial, which is our equivalent of the state level. So for example, all over Texas or all over the province of Ontario, everybody receives the same curriculum. Now, of course, the way you deliver curriculum, the way a teacher interprets curriculum is going to vary from teacher to teacher, classroom to classroom. However, we don't have the system like in many states where it's really just school boards and in some cases schools making decisions. So it's quite different. It's an exciting time in Ontario where I'm living, but also a frustrating time because we did update our sexual health curriculum. Again, it's actually human development and sexual health, part of the health and physical education curriculum. It's not like there's a sex ed class or a sex ed credit. And we updated it to be more inclusive, to be more reflective of the times. But then we have a terrible, our equivalent of a governor, we call it a premier. So our equivalent of a state governor, who came in and rolled that back. So it's a frustrating time, but also an exciting time because we are seeing some changes. And of course, teachers, parents, and students are standing up to the government. In fact, the teachers are on strike today, not over this, but over, of course, education. Yeah, you know how it is. They're not paid as well as they should be, although they're paid more than you guys are, than the teachers are down in the States. And they want to fight for fair classroom sizes and all of that. And all of that is really relevant to sex education because when we think about sex education, it's folks who are forced to the margins who lose out in the most significant ways, right? We have sex education just talking about a penis going in a vagina, but what about people who have sex in very different ways than that? Or we have sex education talking about reproduction, but what about the piece around pleasure, communication, the nuance of healthy relationships and, managing jealousy and insecurity and all that stuff. And so that's what we're trying to do to make sex education more effective and more inclusive.
I love that. And so it's a hard one over here too. And at least we have the podcast outlet. This is a wonderful avenue for people to get their sex education. Anyone and everyone can access it. Ours says
it's not censored quite yet.
Yeah, it's not censored, but ours says explicit, but like anyone can listen to it. You could be 15 and listen to us. So.
But they don't shut you down like Instagram does for posting anything that's explicit.
Yes.
Which
we're so explicit.
Yeah,
we say
are.
Fuck balls. Yeah. All right, let's dive into a couple of sex questions that we have here. There's one that I think kind of pertains to some of what we're talking about in terms of the education piece, in terms of people thinking that bodies should look a certain way. This is specifically about labiaplasty, if I'm saying that correctly. So this is from an anonymous listener, and we can all answer it together, but we're really curious about your perspectives over there in Canada. And so this question it says, I have always struggled with thinking my labia is weird. In high school, a boy said it looked like roast beef. When I got divorced, my ex-husband said some very hurtful things about them as well. After the divorce, I seriously looked into surgery. I eventually met my now fiance and have started to feel somewhat comfortable. He is so great and has given me so much confidence back that I previously lost. However, I just learned what labial hypertrophy is. I had never heard of it, but now I feel like there's something wrong with my body again. It defines types by inches, and according to that, I have type 1 to 2 centimeters. If everyone is different and has different types or sizes, why is there even a name for this issue, and do you have any advice with this? Thoughts?
Wow. So I would say first and foremost, just because a diagnosis or a name exists for something doesn't mean that something is wrong with you, right? So if we look at the history of diagnoses, there are many diagnoses across the sexual spectrum that we now acknowledge are a healthy part of sexual fluidity and sexual identity, right? So we have, for instance, many queer identities being pathologized via psychology, via the medical, I'm going to call it an industry as opposed to just a field. And so I want to really clarify. So I'm a PhD. I am not an MD. So I'm not going to talk from a medical perspective, but we have to remember that medical terminology, medical diagnoses, and the same for psychological diagnoses and language are created by human beings, and human beings have bias. So if we were just going to take it back to you as a person right now, if your labia are not causing you physical problems and the psychological problems that they're causing are more socio-cultural rooted, then you probably don't need to do anything about your labia. I'm really sorry that you had these, awful people in your life who said these terrible things to you. And I'm going to guess these people, whether it's the guy in high school or the ex-husband, also said other nasty things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other nasty things about you as a person. You don't need to change all those things. So I don't think you need to begin by changing your labia. So of course, in porn, bodies look fairly one-dimensional, right? Like all the boobs tend to be perfectly round and perfectly even, and the penis stands straight up, and the butts are really perky. And similarly, the labia are really small. And these are often either anatomical anomalies or they're filtering out other types of bodies, but labia come in all shapes and sizes. And I wish we could do more to love ours. So I know that, there is this thing that you can read about online called labial hypertrophy. I don't know if hypertrophy, not sure if I'm saying it right either. But if it's not causing problems for you, I would just learn to love it. Spend more time touching it, looking at it, tasting it, smelling it, letting your partner admire it. Now, I will say that there are some people who have had problems with the size of their labia. Like I did have a client who found that it got in the way of her clothing, found that she even had trouble having intercourse because the inner lips would almost get pushed in because they hung low. And she was really happy with the results of actually having some surgery. I would say she is one in 10,000 that I've spoken to. And that's an anecdotal number, not real data or anything like that. Many people have work done down there. And I hear many more stories from people who are adversely affected, right? You're not going to believe this. I had a plastic surgeon email me and say, I performed this labiaplasty and I removed part of the labia and part of the clitoral hood. And now this patient is complaining that they can no longer have an orgasm, but can you please explain to her that I didn't touch her clitoris? And I'm like, dude, you touched her clitoral hood. Yeah. That is part and parcel of the clitoris. Yeah, that is our foreskin. And when we rub on that hood, it rubs on the internal cord or erectile tissue that we also call a shaft of the clitoris. So when we rub on that area, it helps to get us off. It's why rubbing and grinding and humping furniture and humping your partner's leg and, grinding on top instead of bouncing up and down like a porn star feels so good. So I would just say that I hope that you can work through this regardless of whether it's with your fiance or just with yourself. If it's not causing you physical problems, really let's get over all of the nonsense that is sold to us, in a world that profits from us hating our bodies and sells us hate of our bodies. It's a revolutionary act just to like your body. And I wish we could spend more time on that. Does that make sense? I mean, that was a lot more to say.
That's the best advice, I think. Just getting a mirror and actually working with what you look like. I mean, I've struggled with that because I actually have a labia tear. And so there was a lot of swelling and pain involved in sex for a long time. And from the age of 18, that happened. And it took me a long time to actually love the scar and to love my vulva again. And we just watched, both Amy and I separately watched the Goop Lab with Betty Dodson and her work on Netflix. And she's all about just embracing your vulva. It's yours. It's like your fingerprint.
And they showed all these different vulvas on there on Netflix. They did
orgasm.
All these different shots of the diversity of vulvas and labia and clitoris and all the different color, shapes, sizes. So I would say also for this listener, go and don't look at porn to see the diversity of vulvas. Go look at something like that episode on Netflix. It's called Goop Lab. Mm-hmm. Or OMGS too is the online program that we talk about on our podcast all the time, which is educational and informative, and it's all about how to learn how to pleasure your body. There's 2 different seasons: there's internal and external pleasure, and they show the diversity of labia, of vulvas, of clitorises, clitori. What is the word for multiple? There's like a specific word that I never get correct.
It's not clitorises.
Yeah,
it's clitoris. Clitori.
I forgot who said it Wednesday, Martin, but yeah, that's the part. A lot of people are just unfamiliar, and then you have someone that shames you and tells you there's something wrong with you, and they're just trying to help make you fit into some cultural norm, and also because they're uneducated or they're uncomfortable or they're putting their whole nonsense about how they think the world should work on you, and that's just not fair.
Who was it? Was it Oliver Wilde, I think, that said something to the effect of the greatest romance you'll ever have in your life is the one that you have with yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's so true. Fall in love with yourself, every part of yourself, love it, and then you'll find that you'll get love back.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And sex plays a big role in this. The more your body kind of performs for you and gives to you, and the more you enjoy it, the more you'll come to love it. We find this, like, if you don't like your stomach, but then all of a sudden, you when you don't like your stomach, for example, you don't let anybody touch it. You never touch it. You never look at it. But then all of a sudden, when you allow yourself to derive pleasure from it, you start to see it in a different light. And I use the stomach as an example because that's another area where I think we feel a lot of shame. I would walk around holding our tummies in. But I think I hope you get to touch yourself more and enjoy it more, and really not worry about these jerks in your past, because this is on them. They're probably very uncomfortable with their own penises or their own lives or their own balls or their buttholes or whatever it is their hang-ups with their body. Let them own that, and you own learning to like yours.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say too is that it sounds like they have a really great opportunity with their current partner, who's now wonderful. I'm curious if this listener has actually shared with their current partner their insecurities and their past trauma and shame with people shaming them, and to maybe make an opportunity for inviting their current partner to tell them, maybe more often you can tell me how beautiful my pussy is, and how you love the taste and the smell, and they can work together with that, of course, authentically. And because sometimes we also have nourishment barriers, it can be hard to take things in. So, and also to practice taking that in every time your partner tells you that your pussy is, beautiful, or that they love to, taste it and touch it and pleasure you, to really take a moment to let that sink in, because it sounds like in the past you got the opposite. So yeah, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Women, and you're not alone. Since a lot of people
I
do
love
this.
Dr. Jess's advice. I think that's nailed it.
Yeah, you're awesome, Jess. All right.
And everything you're saying makes so much sense to me too. I love that, like telling your partner to reinforce it. Obviously, it's not your partner's job to make you love your body. Yeah. You've got to arrive there loving it, but they should never, ever be detracting from that, either, on purpose or inadvertently. So more power in that. I think we tend to be kind of silent in sex. Like, we don't say, oh, this feels so good. Like, we're a silent culture in the West, right? When we eat, we're supposed to eat quietly. We're not supposed to make any noise. And so we stifle every form of pleasurable expression. And so that, comes out in the bedroom too. So let them know it is not rude to talk with your mouth full. Like, get down there and talk with your mouth full.
Yep.
We live in little tiny boxes, little boxes. Get out of the box. Get out of that box. Yeah. Will you answer another sex question for us?
I would love to.
Oh, good. This one is from another anonymous listener. So I am a cisgendered heterosexual male in my 30s. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Beginning at around the age of 2, both my biological father and brother engaged in sexual behavior with me. Over a period of 10 years, my dad began to stop the behavior, but my brother escalated to frequently raping me. I've been in therapy for years and continue to deal with a lot of sexual shame, self-hatred, fear of physical intimacy, and somatic trauma. Erection and ejaculation is usually really painful as I have a lot of trouble relaxing myself. I get migraines and have even experienced dissociative seizures during past consensual sex experiences. I recently began dating someone. It's been 13 years since I have considered going out with someone. I don't know how to talk to her, and she's been making it clear that she is interested in having sex with me. I'm terrified. But yet, I also really like her and genuinely want to experience sexual intimacy. I have a great therapist who has been wonderful at helping me heal. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's really not her field of expertise. What do you think is a good way to let my new SO know my story? And are there things we can do to make sex less threatening for me? Thank you so much for the courage for writing us, listener. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I know how this can be very difficult, and I really admire the way you express yourself emotionally. It sounds like you really cultivated a degree of emotional expression and literacy that is going to lay the groundwork for healthy relationships. I think that is far more important than any sex technique or any amount of sexual experience or any other kind of finesse that you have in the bedroom. The capacity to express yourself with vulnerability and with that emotional openness is going to carry you so far. First and foremost, I think it's important that you talk to your partner before you proceed with sex, and also open your mind to different types of sexual experiences to begin with. So when we think about hetero-cis sex, we think about a penis going in a vagina, or something going in some sort of an orifice. And sex can be so much more than that. So if we start with the conversation, I think that a good place to start is to ask your partner what they're interested in, what makes them comfortable, what arouses them, what brings them pleasure, and ask them about their own experiences. Like I have this questionnaire on sexual values that I often share with couples and with groups, where it begins with, what does sex mean to you? Because sex is celebrated in our culture as this thing that is supposed to be amazing all the time, and it's so good and we should all enjoy it. But the reality is, if you've experienced trauma, sex may not be experienced as something positive, and that's your reality. That doesn't mean that through therapy and through, your own work, you can't learn to experience sex as something pleasurable, but it isn't your baseline. It isn't your default. And that's an important message to convey to your new significant other. So I would begin by asking them, what does sex mean to you? What were some of the messages that you were raised with? Which of these messages do you want to retain? Which of these messages do you want to discard? Are there, often I start with, are there intergenerational norms that you want to rework for yourself? And then this gives you an opportunity to share your story as well. So I have a sexual values questionnaire that I'll send to you and we'll post if you wanted to go through it. It is not specifically focused on trauma, but it might be a place to start for questions to even consider for yourself first and then bring to your partner. And you can say, I was listening to this podcast and they shared this tool with us, and I have some challenges around sex I want to talk to you about. And you can say, I'm interested in an intimate relationship. I'm interested perhaps in a sexual relationship, but first we have to have this conversation. And I think, if you have a supportive partner, they're going to be very open to hearing this, especially the way you communicate with such honesty and vulnerability. So that's the first part. Can you set some time aside for the conversation? Can you both open your minds to the fact that sex can be experienced in so many different ways? Like you can experience sexual pleasure kissing and hugging and snuggling and touching if you're ready for that. And there's no reason why one experience has to escalate to another experience. I think sometimes we avoid all affection and all intimate touch, or even all sexual and erotic touch, because we are afraid that it's going to lead to one thing or another, when in fact, thank goodness in 2020, we're talking about consent at every stage in the process. And then thirdly, I would encourage you to think about how you experience pleasure in all forms? What are all the different types of pleasure you embrace, whether it's food or drink or art or other types of awe in nature? Because perhaps you're working through this with your therapist already, but if you're not, I think it's really important to embrace enjoying the physical sensations in your body and how they connect to the psychological, emotional, and of course the psychogenic reactions that occur when somebody touches you. So I hope this helps a little. It's a very big question.
Yeah.
I'm happy you have a therapist to support you. You might also consider speaking to a trauma-informed sex therapist as well, and we can put out some links for you in that in that regard. Because if this therapist isn't prepared to talk about sex, I acknowledge and appreciate that they've set that boundary. Mm-hmm. But sex, of course, doesn't occur in a vacuum. Yeah. And so, if you're talking about relationships, if you're talking about communication, if you're talking about emotional connection, you may also want to talk about sex.
Yeah, that was something I thought about too, is that to have it maybe a secondary therapist of some sort who is more really geared towards sexuality, because a lot of, what is it, like they'd only need 10 hours of training in a lot of the therapeutic, the psychological, whatever institutions, right? It's not something that is that they go into in depth in a lot of the trainings. And something else is, so I did the a Hakomi training. It was a two-year holistic psychotherapy training. We talk about the window of tolerance in there, and that you hang out in the window of tolerance when you're resourced. You can be in your body, you can be connected to yourself and to others, and you go outside the window of tolerance when you're either in like panic mode or a disassociative mode of some sort, where you kind of like numb out and you're leaving your body as a trauma response to try to help you. It's actually, your body's brilliant. And so kind of adding on to what you were saying, Jess, is with your new partner, when you actually do start to touch, to create boundaries where you're allowed to you're going really, really slow, and it's maybe practicing speaking, not even touching genitals, maybe not making it sexual, like hands and arms and things. And noticing, maybe like adding a number system of when, a 10 is like panic, okay, I'm at a 4 or 5. Okay, we're at a 6. We need to stop what we're doing. And to see what it feels like when your body gets more activated, and when you start to dissociate, and to really play with getting a greater understanding of when your body shifts and what you need in those moments. Do you need a hug? Do you need to just take some deep breaths? Do you need personal space? Do you need to phone a friend? So starting to explore that, and what ideas to kind of keep you in the window of tolerance while you're in sensual or sexual settings, and it'll be a practice, and to start that practice outside of it being just sexual.
Two things I wanted to add too that came up when both of you are talking, I love all of that, is doing some, I don't know if we've talked about EMDR therapy before, and that's for folks that have experienced a lot of trauma, and also craniosacral, which is the trauma that gets stuck in the body. So it's more of a holistic approach, but it is very successful. And look it up if you have a craniosacral worker, that they have to be specific, and they can actually help you move through. It's going to be a process, because this is severe trauma. I mean, obviously it's going to be stuck. It's from childhood. And I would recommend just really taking an approach from all angles, from the brain to the body, because trauma can get stuck. And this is a heavy situation. And hopefully there are people out there that will be able to help you, that have more expertise than the therapist now in that specific field, because you're going to have to talk to someone that really knows how to work through that. So yeah, that's, my heart goes out to this listener so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for sharing, because I'm sure there are other people. Obviously, there are many people with similar stories, and it's work, and it's a process, and it's obviously never a quick fix. And even when you think that, maybe you've overcome one piece, you're always moving through it, right? So you might, for example, work really slowly through different types of touch, and mindful touch, and meditative touch. And then eventually you might have an experience that feels sexual, and you might have many experiences that feel sexual and go really well. And then months, years later, you could have one that feels traumatic, that feels triggering. And sometimes you'll be able to acknowledge or recognize your triggers, and other times you won't. But it's not a linear process. And I don't ever want you to feel like it's a step back if you're struggling yet again. Like, I think sometimes we think when we're healing from anything, including trauma, that we're ascending a hill, when in fact it's always, many kind of hills and valleys and bumps in the road.
I love that. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not linear, and it's not a switch. You can't just, unfortunately, just switch and turn it off. It's there, and you just have to learn how to have the tools to work through it. And it's really going to be an all-encompassing approach. So I love your advice, Dr. Jess. Oh, sorry. We have a little dog situation and a squeaky dog toy.
Hello, squeaky dog.
Yeah. Hopefully did you hear it?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, did you,
I only just heard it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's cute.
It is adorable. It's also distracting.
We're now dog moms that are like, well, this is what people who are parents have to deal with. We're like, oh God, the child is crying. Yeah. Only better and softer and maybe a little easier.
I love the fur babies.
They're super cute. All right. Well, enough about squeaky dog toys. Jess, we understand that you have some questions from your listeners as well. So we'd love to hear your questions and your answers, and maybe we can help to contribute in that as well. So what you got for us?
Awesome. So I have one from a listener who says, I was watching your YouTube videos, listening to the podcast, found them interesting. Since I'm visually impaired, almost blind, I was wondering what to do about a problem I have. Since eye contact is very important in sexual attraction, what do I do instead of it? It's difficult to create attraction if I can't gaze into someone or read their eyes. If you have any advice on this, can you point me in the right direction?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, one of my thoughts, I mean, you have all these different senses, and actually I think of like sensory deprivation and how when we take away one of the senses that heightens these other ones, and we put so much emphasis on, I think, on our vision and what we see, and I love all these different models for sexuality, right? Like for me, when I see a naked body, that's not what gets me going. What gets me going is the words that are said and the type of touch and the energy there, because I'm an energetic person in terms of that, how that works for me. And so the visual part isn't really for me necessarily a top priority. So you have all these other things that, you're hearing, your sense of smell, your taste, the touch of your skin and someone else's skin. And so exploring something more. And they're talking about kind of, it seems like more of the initial phases though of attraction and connection there too. And so I would think in there, maybe touch isn't the part of that because that's like, later part of the negotiation, but really the hearing their voice and their tones of how this person speaks to you and sounds and how that resonates in your body. I think that can be a really powerful thing. Your hearing is a really big thing for you in terms of,
yes,
you look very auditory.
I could close my eyes and just listen to the sounds of a sexual experience. And I love that. And what came up for me with this particular question was, number one, speaking, using what talking about what you're experiencing that you're not seeing. So I smell your I don't know, your scent, or it smells like Palo Santo. And I feel, and maybe also talking about if you are touching, can I touch your face? And then just, wow, your skin feels so silky or so rough, whatever it feels like, talk about that. And then what's happening within your body. I'm getting a tingling sensation in my genitals or in my fingertips or wherever it's happening. And that can be really hot. Also, if the other person that's involved in the experience isn't visually impaired, maybe they could be blindfolded and you both could share the experiences together of what they have going on inside of their mind and with their senses. So, and then if you want to incorporate touch, talk about that. But you can have it like this experiential sort of thing that is fun and not so much pressure with the eye gazing, because eye gazing can also get awkward. I am really uncomfortable sometimes when there's deep eye gazing. I have to be prepared for that. So you don't necessarily need it to be turned on or put out the fires can still be lit.
I think you and I are born on the same sexual cloud, because I find the eye contact really intimidating. In fact, when I really want to push my boundaries is when I will look at my partner in the eye during sex, for example. And I mean, we're close, we're comfortable, we've been together like 19 years. But that eye contact is so intense. Whereas the voice is so relaxing, so soothing, like it just sucks me in. And when I think of particularly with men, not as much with women for me, but when I think of the men I'm attracted to, they all have something in common in their voice. Like there's a certain tone. So I think about, let's say you're friends with someone or you're acquaintances with someone and you're trying to move it into a more romantic direction. I think even just changing the tone of your voice. Like I have so many tones of my voice that I use for different things. And this is like my natural voice right now. It's kind of like young and high and not very sexy, apparently. But I shift my voice depending on the message I'm trying to send. And I feel that's so much more powerful than just eye contact. I know that sex experts always say like, oh, if you want more intimacy, look your partner in the eye. And I get the value in that. I understand that, we get this boost in oxytocin. And hey, it works with your dog too. Do you know about that?
Oh, yeah.
Eye contact with dogs.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's why your little dog won't look at you when it wants to disobey you, right? It can't look you in the eye and disobey. Yeah. So I love that you're bringing this up. And it reminds me of, so I wrote a book with Marla Renee Stewart, and she talks about the seduction learning styles and how your learning style often aligns with how you want to be seduced, or in the language of this listener, create attraction, right? So if you're a really audio person, if you're a very visual person, and I love the way you also described what you're feeling. I'm not very good at that, but my partner's really good at that, and it really gets me going. So I love using all 5 senses and really tuning in, because mostly we kind of move mindlessly. Like right as I speak, you're not really listening to the tone of my voice, to the energy in my voice. Primarily, you're trying to hear what I'm saying in terms of content. But if we shift this up and really tune in, like to the other layers of each of these senses, I think it gives you such a deeper experience and a different type of, as this person says, attraction. But I think about seduction.
It's all about presence, right? It is being right in that moment, like a meditation, being in the moment and feeling all the feelings, smelling all the smells, hearing whatever you're hearing.
There's so many ways to do it. It isn't just this. I think of like Tantra, right? Which is wonderful. I loved the Tantra, and people think of Tantra as eye gazing. Oh, you're so much eye gazing and breathe with each other. There's a lot more to it, and it really is that presence, and it's using all the body senses as a means towards that awakening and aliveness and deep connection now, so you don't have to just do it in one way.
Love that kind of the breath work that you could also breathe with your partner.
Oh, yeah,
you
like
don't have
circular.
To see them,
yeah,
right. You could kind of feel their chest or their heartbeat. That's very deep.
Yeah. I love the one with the blindfold that you said. That was so brilliant. Oh. Good job.
Oh, thanks.
That's so good. Yeah. And there's research that shows that our bodily functions get in sync with one another when we become in sync, right? Like your heartbeat syncs, your breath rate syncs. And so there are all these different ways. It's not like our blinking rate syncs. God, my husband could never keep up because I blink every 2 seconds. But those other things you can still be really in tune with. So, I mean, I think it's really important to know that there's no deficit here. And in fact, as you said, it can be enhanced.
It's called mirroring. I just learned about this actually, Dr. Jess. It's called mirroring, and it's biological. The humans do it when they spend a lot of time with each other. They sync up. Amy and I do it. Sometimes she'll cross her legs and I'll look and I'm like, oh my God, we're sitting the exact same way right now with our hands like in between our legs. It's funny. So I love that mirroring. And you could do it with people, how they speak as well. You can mirror what they say.
We use that in business all the time, right? In terms of sales, they tell you to mirror people's behavior, mirror their language, mirror their tone, mirror their volume. So all these different options. I think it's so interesting the way we create attraction, and also it's highly individual, right? Like for some people, eye contact is really important, and for others, and even though you can still be looking in one another's directions, even if you are blind, right? There are all these different ways. And I'm sure that this would be a better question, in fact, for somebody who is blind to share their perspective. So maybe that's something we can consider for the future, because we're not the experts. We're just, sharing whatever perspective and insights we have. So a good idea for an upcoming podcast.
Yeah. So someone else.
Or if there's a listener out there, right, that has anything to suggest.
What are your tips?
We would love to hear what you have to say as well.
Love it. Okay, so I know that we could do this forever because we have so many questions that we would like to answer, and we get them all the time from listeners, and so do you, Jess. And we promise to do this again because
TBD, to be decided. TBC, to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. But again, thank you to all of our listeners and Jess's listeners for asking questions. And Jess, you're fucking awesome.
And I love a Canadian accent.
Yeah.
I love a Canadian accent. It warms my heart.
Yeah. And
what
your
are you
advice
talking about? I love it.
Yeah. It's
My
wonderful.
house. I'm in my house.
I'm in my house.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
We'll see you again soon. To all of our listeners out there,
Go check out Dr. Jess's
talk
podcast.
for sure. And you have a lot of content. You've been all over mainstream media. So check out our website.
What's your remind our listeners of your website again?
Please.
It's sexwithdrjess.com.
Cool. And your podcast is just Sex with Dr. Jess on all the apps.
That's right.
So go check it out, y'all. And to Margins Wine, if you don't have Margins Wine, you're missing out a little bit. We love Margins Wine. It's a little too early to be drinking right now, but as soon as 2 o'clock hits, we will have ourselves a glass. So go to marginswine.com, sign up for the newsletter. She only does 2 releases, a boutique, beautiful wine. And to you, our listeners, we love you. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.